Hi, everyone. Welcome to the pilot episode of Melanated Mentor MD. My name is Dr. Alrika Jackson, and I am creating this video in hopes to kick off a YouTube series, or perhaps a YouTube channel, or perhaps an empire for people who are going through, or have gone through, or are thinking about going through non-traditional paths in medicine. As you can see, I am off today. I got my tea. I got my cozy vibe atmosphere, and I am happy to share my experiences with you all. So with that being said, let's get into it. But I did want to use this video to share my story and the things that I learned throughout my transition into the specialty that I'm in today, which is psychiatry. In another video, I'll talk all about psychiatry, what I like about it, what I don't like about it, how to get there, and hopefully that will be helpful to anyone wanting to go into psychiatry or any other specialty. Now, bringing it back to this video, I will give an overview of my story, then I will go into a little bit more detail, and then I will get to the things that I've learned. If you are not interested in hearing me talk about myself, then feel free to skip to the segment where I get into the learning points. So to begin, I went to med school. I found a residency, or I found a specialty rather, that I thought was really cool. I applied for that specialty, matched in that specialty, started the residency, realized that it was not at all what it was portrayed to be in medical school, grew to hate it, had a big mental health crisis, took a leave of absence, tried to come back, did not work, took a longer leave of absence, and then realized I did not want to go back for the sake of my own well-being. Resigned without anything lined up, figured out that I wanted to pursue psychiatry, and ultimately ended up matching in a spot, or not necessarily matching because I went outside the match, but obtained a spot in a program in the time frame that I was seeking. So that is the framework. Now, getting into the details. The reason why I wanted to do this specialty was because I thought it would be badass to be a Black female blank. And I wanted to portray that. It was essentially looking back more so for the perception I gave to other people rather than what I really needed from a medical specialty. More so when I was rotating on my specialty, or when I was rotating in med school on that specialty, I thought it was really cool. I loved the fun aspects of it without realizing that most of it is not at all going to be like how I perceived it to be in medical school. So with that being said, I decided to pursue this specialty. Now, there were a lot of people who tried to talk me out of it, but at the time I was like, I'm not going to let anybody tell me what to do. I'm not going to let anybody discourage me from doing what I really wanted to do. Matched into this specialty, and it was not at all what I thought it was going to be. It was not fun in any way, shape, or form. Looking back, I did not enjoy a lot of aspects of it. Even when I was getting to what I thought was the fun part, it wasn't even fun. And so I just pushed that realization to the back of my mind, and I was like, I have to get through it. I can't give up. There's no other way to be successful as a blank, as a doctor in general, if I don't get through this. And so I pushed through. Now, coming up to where my residency, or my time in that specialty, started to end, there was a point where I was pretty advanced in the residency. After that year, I only had 1 year left. the finish line was so close, and I would be so much better off and so much happier if I could just make it to the finish line. But what I did realize was that I was at a level or at a year in my residency where I should have the basics of the skill that I was supposed to learn in that residency, and that part should just be refining that skill. And once I realized that that was not happening, I had to look back and be like, okay, what am I doing to, not meeting my own expectations? And a lot of it had to do with the attendings that I was working with. So the vast majority of attendings were very, very hesitant to give residents autonomy. And after that, I was standing in, the situation that I was in, where the attending was doing most of the work, and I just started crying. I literally was standing there crying. I don't think anybody noticed, but I was just, drenching myself in tears. That day, I called the chief and I was like, hey, I can't do it today. Like, I really need today off. And luckily the chiefs were very nice, and they covered for me while I took that day or two. At that point, I called my mom, very, very depressed. Of course, my parents got very worried. Mom came down to see about me. And so I went back. I was still, not necessarily excited or even remotely interested in the specialty. However, I just wanted to get out. And so I had this looming feeling that things were going to go bad. And I don't know if you're into like spirituality or signs or visions or things like that, but I just kept having this this pit in my stomach feeling that something was going to go wrong with my next rotation. And so I don't know if I manifested that or if that was a feeling I should have listened to back then. However, things went south in that rotation. Long story short, the people in that specialty or in that subspecialty were very, very isolating towards me. They did not necessarily welcome me into their specialty. I felt more like a workhorse than a young doctor in training that was supposed to gain a skill. And I ended up, it all came to a head where I ended up just having a full panic attack and having to leave in the middle of the day. So luckily my co-residents were, able to cover for me. I don't necessarily know if they were happy about it. However, it wasn't portrayed to me that I was an inconvenience or a nuisance. So I went to my program director during that panic attack. And at that time, my program director said, well, perhaps not for you. And so I finally, got that in my brain that maybe I'm doing the wrong thing. However, I would have liked to realize that earlier in the training so that I wouldn't necessarily find myself so far advanced and then having to start over. Nonetheless, at that time, I was full in crisis. I didn't have time to think about any of that. And so I ended up seeking some guidance from somebody else. I decided to take a leave of absence for 2 weeks, very temporary, with the intent of coming back. Now, I will say that during that leave of absence, I did not do anything. I was in tears most of the time. And even when I called my chiefs to give them an update, I was legitimately in tears. However, I was like, I'm going to come back, it'll be fine. So I went back, and essentially the day before I was supposed to start again, I was just panicking. I was physically shaking. I was crying nonstop. And it was to a point where I could not get out of bed. And I said to myself, if I have to go back to that hospital, I may not make it. And so I called my program and I was like, I cannot do it. So I took an indefinite leave of absence. And in that time, I did a lot of soul searching. And well, more so at the beginning of the leave, I did a lot of resting, self-deprecating. I was very resentful. I didn't even know if I wanted to even go into medicine. I hated the idea that I had to be put through that whole process, that whole mindset. And I was just very, very angry. But then once that anger subsided a little bit, I realized that I was not able to take care of myself in the way that I needed to continue in that specialty. And so with that, I decided to resign. What was really scary about it was that I had nothing lined up. And so that part between resigning and bringing myself to the point where I was able to obtain a position was the scariest part. And so now I'm going to share the things that I learned during that part and during the whole journey that I'm hoping will inspire or encourage people who are watching.